Hi everyone, welcome back to another video on literature. And today we will be discussing about relationships, not just about the normal relationship, but that had clicked your mind, but it's actually about what Jane Austen understood about relationships. Now, if you see, Jane Austen probably, okay, basically she's an author and she died more than 200 years ago, but somehow she still understands what a modern relationship would look like. Think about it. The modern relationships like, issues like miscommunication, ego, first impressions, emotional unavailability, judging people too quickly, and also falling for someone you completely misunderstood. So, Jane Austen wrote about all of this long before dating apps, social media, and relationship podcast existed. So, what exactly did Jane Austen understand about relationship? Let's look at 5 lessons from her novels. So, the first impression, it usually can be wrong. So, let's start with probably her most famous couple, which is Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. So, they are characters from the novel Pride and Prejudice. So, when Elizabeth first meets Darcy, she doesn't like him. She thinks that he is very proud, arrogant, and very unpleasant. And Darcy doesn't exactly help himself. He is a very distant and reserved and terrible at making a very good expression first impression. So Elizabeth forms an opinion, right? And then something interesting happens. She begins interpreting everything he does through that opinion, and this is something we all do, right? So once we decide what someone is like, we start looking for evidences that prove us right. So Jane Austen understood this psychological trap very well. So sometimes the person you dislike at first is simply the person you haven't understood yet. So a first impression is information. It is not always the truth. Right. So in this second lesson, she talks about attraction is not enough, in a relationship. So Jane Austen also understood that relationship need more than an attraction. Maybe you can look at sense and sensibility. The characters experience love, attraction, and emotional confusion, but Austen, she keeps asking a deeper question: can this relationship actually work? So do these people respect each other? That is where the respect comes. Can they communicate clearly? Do they share values? Can they handle difficult situations together? Today we often talk about chemistry, but chemistry is only one part of the relationship. You can be deeply attracted to someone and still be completely compatible with them. So Austen understood that love needs something else. It needs respect, it needs compatibility and character. So let's now go back to the character Darcy. Now, Darcy has feelings for Elizabeth, but his pride gets in the way. He struggles to express himself. Elizabeth also has her own assumptions and prejudices. So, what happens? Now, two people who might actually like each other spend a huge amount of time misunderstanding each other, and this is something we still see today. So, sometimes the problem isn't that two people don't care, the problem is they don't want to be the first person to admit that they care. So the ego actually can turn a simple conversation into a completely emotional game, and Jane Austen understood that very well. Sometimes relationship, they don't fail because there is no love, they fail because there is too much of pride, right? So one of Austen's greatest strength was observing behavior. Her character don't always say exactly what they feel, but their actions reveal them. And this is especially clear in Emma. And Emma believes she understands other people's relationships. She interprets conversations and she creates stories. She assumes she knows what other people feel, but eventually she discovers that she has misunderstood them. And that is an important relationship lesson. You don't listen to what someone says, but watch how they behave and how do they treat people when they don't don't need anything from them, right? So how do you basically have to behave when they are angry? How do they respond when they disagree with them? Because words can be carefully chosen, they have to be carefully chosen as well, because you cannot go and hurt someone just because you are not in agreeable terms with them. So behavior is very harder to hide. And perhaps the most beautiful thing about Austen's relationship is that the characters often have changed. Elizabeth has to question her assumptions about Darcy, and Darcy has to confront his pride. So Emma has to recognize her own mistakes. They don't simply fall in love, they become more self-aware. And that's the important difference here. So a healthy relationship isn't about finding someone who completely perfect for you, but it's about becoming someone capable of having a healthy relationship. And also you have to learn to listen, apologize, change, and sometimes also admit that you were wrong, right? So what did Jane Austen understand about relationship here? First one is, first impressions can be actually wrong, and attraction isn't the same as a compatibility. And also ego can destroy a beautiful connection. And fourth, behavior often reveals more than words. And fifth, healthy relationship require personal growth as well. So she wasn't simply writing love stories here, she was writing about human behavior. She understood that relationships are not just about finding the right person, they are about learning to understand yourself and learning to understand other person as well. And perhaps that's a real Austen lesson. Love may bring two people together, but understanding is what allows them to stay together. Bye.